The salon smelled like chamomile shampoo and the faint electrical hum of the overhead lights. Rose sat in her own chair, the second one from the window, the leather cracked just so along the right armrest, and ran her fingers through her hair. Silver white, long enough to brush her shoulders, thick in a way that still surprised her some mornings. 3 years ago, there hadn't been any hair at all. Just a smooth scalp and the promise from her oncologist that maybe it would grow back, and maybe it would come in different. It had. It came back like her late husband used to say, like moonlight. Not because it was pretty, though Rose thought it was, in its own way, because it was hers, because it was proof she was still here. She twisted a strand around her finger, studying the way the morning light caught in it. Frosted glass filtered the sun into something softer, something easier on the eyes. Her first appointment wasn't for another 20 minutes. She liked these moments before the day started, when the salon was just hers. The quiet, the stillness, the smell of clean towels stacked by the sink. She'd built this place from nothing. Well, not nothing. Her husband had helped with the loan, back when David was still in elementary school, and they'd been so sure that the little strip mall location would be a good bet. It had been. 23 years later, the salon was still here. She was still here. The bell above the door chimed. Rose glanced up, expecting her 9 o'clock, but the doorway stayed empty. Just the wind, maybe, or the latch not catching right. She made a mental note to call the landlord again, then let it go. Small things. She was good at letting small things go these days. Her phone buzzed on the counter. David's name flashed across the screen. She picked it up, tucked it between her shoulder and ear while she started prepping her station. Comb, scissors, the spray bottle filled with distilled water that left hair shinier than tap ever did. "Morning, honey," she said. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded tight, stretched thin like a rubber band pulled too far. "You busy tonight?" Rose paused, her hand hovering over the scissors. "I've got a 6:30, but I'll be done by 7. "Why?" "Meredith wants to have you over for dinner. Family thing. She's insisting." Insisting? Not asking? Not hoping? Rose set the scissors down carefully, precisely, in the exact center of the counter. "That sounds nice," she said, because what else could she say? "What time?" 7:30? She's making something with kale. I don't know. He exhaled, a sound that could have been a laugh or frustration or both. "You know Meredith." Rose did. She knew Meredith wore white like a uniform and kept her house so clean it felt like stepping into a design magazine. She knew Meredith smiled with all her teeth and none of her eyes. She knew that 6 months ago at a Sunday dinner Rose had cooked herself. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, the green beans David had loved since. He was 8. Meredith had touched Rose's hair and said, "It's so witchy, isn't it? All that silver. You should go normal, just a little dye. No one would even know." David had laughed. A small sound, uncomfortable, like he'd wanted to smooth it over. Rose had smiled and changed the subject, but she'd felt it. The first crack in something she hadn't known was fragile. 7:30 works, Rose said. "I'll bring wine." "You don't have to. I want to." David was quiet for a beat too long. Then, "Okay, see you tonight." He hung up before she could say goodbye. Rose's 6:30 canceled, which meant she had time to stop at the wine shop and pick up something Meredith would like. Something expensive enough to feel like effort, but not so expensive it looked like she was trying too hard. She settled on a Pinot Grigio with a label that had a bird on it. Meredith liked birds. Or at least she had bird-themed throw pillows on the couch in the living room. Close enough. David's house was a 30-minute drive from the salon, out past the edge of town where the new development sprawled across what used to be farmland. Modern farmhouse, Meredith called it. White siding, black shutters, a front door painted the color of charcoal. Rose always felt like she should take her shoes off before stepping inside, even though Meredith never asked her to. The kitchen was open concept, all white marble and stainless steel, with an island big enough to land a small plane on. No photos on the walls, no magnets on the fridge, nothing out of place. Meredith opened the door before Rose could knock. She was wearing linen, a soft beige tunic and matching pants, barefoot, her blonde hair pulled into a low bun that looked effortless but probably wasn't. She smiled, all teeth, and pulled Rose into a hug that felt like a performance. Too tight, too long, her perfume sharp and floral. "Rose, come in, come in. David's just finishing up a call." She stepped back, holding Rose at arm's length like she was inspecting her. Her gaze flicked to Rose's hair, lingered there for half a second, then dropped to the wine bottle. "Oh, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," Rose said again. She stepped inside, slipped off her shoes even though Meredith hadn't asked, and followed her into the kitchen. The table was already set. 3 places, white plates, cloth napkins folded into complicated shapes Rose didn't recognize. A salad sat in a wooden bowl in the center. Kale, quinoa, something that might have been pomegranate seeds. Meredith gestured to the chair facing the window. Rose sat. Meredith poured water from a glass pitcher, added a slice of lemon to each glass, and settled into the chair across from her. "David will be down in a minute," Meredith said. She folded her hands on the table, fingers laced together, and smiled again. Softer this time, almost kind. "I'm so glad you could come tonight. We need to talk about the future." Rose's stomach tightened. She picked up her water glass, took a sip, let the cold slide down her throat before she answered. "The future? You know, planning ahead. David and I have been thinking a lot about how older generations sometimes hold on to things too long. Houses, money, old styles." Her gaze flicked to Rose's hair again. Just a glance. Quick, pointed. "It's natural, but it's not always the best thing. For anyone." Rose set the glass down. The condensation left a ring on the marble. She didn't wipe it away. "I'm not sure I follow." Meredith's smile didn't waver. "We can talk more over dinner. I just wanted to plant the seed." David appeared in the doorway before Rose could respond. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled like he'd pulled it from the laundry basket instead of the closet. He kissed Meredith on the cheek, squeezed Rose's shoulder as he passed, and sat down at the head of the table. No one said grace. Meredith served the salad in silence, her movements precise, practiced. Rose ate because it was expected. The kale was bitter. Dinner stretched. Meredith talked about a yoga retreat she wanted to book, a new furniture store downtown, the neighbor's dog that barked too early in the morning. David nodded in the right places, made affirming sounds, pushed food around his plate. Rose watched him and tried to remember the last time they'd had a conversation that wasn't shaped like small talk. She couldn't. Dessert was panna cotta, vanilla, topped with a berry compote that tasted like it came from a jar. Meredith set the bowls down with a flourish, then disappeared into the other room. She returned with a folder, cream-colored, the kind you'd buy at an office supply store. She set it on the table in front of Rose, right next to her half-eaten dessert. "What's this?" Rose asked. "Just something we thought you might want to look at." Meredith's voice was light, casual, like she was offering a magazine. "David and I have been talking to a financial planner. You know, estate planning, avoiding taxes, that kind of thing." Rose opened the folder. Inside were printed pages, neatly stapled, with highlighted sections and sticky notes in the margins, a codicil to her will. She scanned the first page, then the second, her pulse ticking up with each line. The language was dense, legal terms she half recognized, clauses that looped back on themselves, but the core of it was clear enough. If she signed this, the salon property would transfer to David and Meredith now, immediately. To build equity early and avoid estate taxes. The document was already notarized on Meredith's end. Pre-signed, ready. Rose closed the folder. She looked up at Meredith, then at David. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at his panna cotta like it held the answers to questions he didn't want to ask. "This is a lot to process," Rose said carefully. Her voice sounded steady. She was proud of that. "I'll need to think about it." Meredith's smile cooled. "Just a fraction. Just enough." "Of course. Take your time." "We just thought." "Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? You're not getting any younger, and the salon, David could really use the equity. We're trying to start a family, and I said I'll think about it." The room went quiet. David's fork clinked against his bowl. Meredith's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. Something sharp slid behind them, something that had been waiting. Rose stood. She picked up the folder, tucked it under her arm, and reached for her purse. "Thank you for dinner. It was lovely." "You're leaving already?" Meredith's voice had an edge now, thin and bright like a wire pulled taut. "Early morning tomorrow." Rose moved toward the door, her shoes still by the entryway where she'd left them. David stood, half rose from his chair, then sat back down. She slipped her shoes on, fumbled with the laces, heard Meredith's footsteps behind her. "Don't be selfish, witch." The word was a whisper. soft enough that David wouldn't hear from the dining room, sharp enough to land exactly where Meredith meant it to. Rose's hands stilled on her laces. She straightened, turned, looked at Meredith's face, the smile still there, frozen now, daring Rose to react. Rose didn't. She picked up her purse, opened the door, and stepped out into the cool night air. Behind her, she heard Meredith call out, louder now, bright and cheerful. "Drive safe. Let us know what you think." Rose got into her car. She set the folder on the passenger seat, started the engine, and pulled out of the driveway. She didn't look back. 2 days later, Rose was cutting hair for Mrs. Valdez, who came in every 6 weeks for a trim and stayed for an hour to talk about her grandchildren. Rose liked Mrs. Valdez. She tipped well and didn't mind silence when Rose needed it. Today, though, she was talking, something about her daughter's new job, the commute, the cost of gas, and Rose was only half listening. Her hands moved on autopilot, sectioning and snipping, the rhythm of it soothing in a way that didn't require thought. "Oh, I saw your son the other day," Mrs. Valdez said. "Downtown. He was going into that lawyer's office on Maple Street, the one with the blue awning." Rose's hands paused, just for a second. Just long enough for the scissors to hang in the air, motionless, before she lowered them and adjusted the cape around Mrs. Valdez's shoulders. "Did you?" "Mm-hmm." I waved, but I don't think he saw me. He looked stressed. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Rose said. She picked up the comb, ran it through Mrs. Valdez's hair, sectioned off another piece. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. "Just busy, I'm sure." Mrs. Valdez nodded, satisfied, and moved on to another topic. Rose finished the cut, styled it, walked her to the front desk to check out. She smiled in the right places, said the right things, watched Mrs. Valdez leave with a wave and a promise to come back in 6 weeks. Then Rose locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and sat down in her chair, the second one from the window, the leather cracked just so. She pulled out her phone and opened the browser, typed in elder financial abuse. The search results filled the screen, article after article, warning signs, red flags, stories that sounded uncomfortably familiar. She scrolled through them, her chest tight, her hands trembling just enough to make the screen blur. She felt foolish, then angry at feeling foolish, then tired. She closed the browser, set the phone down, and sat there in the empty salon as the afternoon light slanted through the frosted glass and turned everything soft and uncertain. That evening, Rose sat in her small house, the one she and her late husband had bought when David was a toddler, the one with the wood floors that creaked in winter and the kitchen that still smelled like the cinnamon rolls she used to bake on Sundays. The walls were covered in photos, David at 8, gap-toothed and sunburned. David at graduation, cap tilted at an angle. David and Meredith on their wedding day, both of them smiling like they meant it. Her husband's guitar still leaned in the corner of the living room. She hadn't moved it. Couldn't, really. It felt too much like erasing him. Rose sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea she didn't drink and the folder Meredith had given her. She read through it again, slower this time, highlighting the sections that made her stomach twist. Power of attorney. That phrase jumped out at her. If she'd signed this, she would have handed over decision-making rights. Not just the property, everything. She picked up her phone, stared at David's name in her contacts. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She didn't press it. Instead, she scrolled further down, found Martin's name, and texted him, "Can you come by tomorrow? Need your help with something?" His response came 2 minutes later. "Of course. What time?" Rose typed back, "Afternoon? I'll make coffee. See you at 2. She set the phone down and looked around her kitchen, the mismatched mugs in the cabinet, the table that wobbled if you leaned on the left side, the window over the sink that faced the backyard where David used to play. This house was hers. The salon was hers. Her hair was hers. And she was done letting anyone make her feel like she needed permission to keep them. The next Sunday, Meredith called. Rose was folding laundry in the living room, the TV on in the background playing a cooking show she wasn't watching. She saw Meredith's name on the screen and considered not answering, but that felt petty. So she picked up. "Rose, hi." Meredith's voice was too bright. Forced cheer, like she was reading from a script. "I wanted to invite you over for dinner again. This Sunday. I know last time was a little tense. I want to make it up to you." Rose folded a towel, set it on the couch, picked up another one. "That's kind of you. And I have a surprise for you, a gift really. My Friend Tasha, she's an amazing stylist. She's going to come over and give you a makeover. On me. I thought it would be fun. Just a little refresh. Rose's hands stilled. She looked at the TV, at a chef chopping onions with a knife that looked too sharp, and felt something cold settle in her chest. A makeover. Nothing drastic, just, something more modern. Tasha's incredible. She trained in New York. You're going to love her. I don't. Please, Rose. Let me do this. I feel terrible about how last week went. Let's just have a nice evening. Family. Rose closed her eyes. Thought about David. About the distance between them that seemed to grow wider every time they spoke. About the way he'd looked at his panna cotta instead of at her. Okay, she said. What time? 6. Perfect. See you then. Meredith hung up before Rose could change her mind. Rose arrived at 6 on Sunday with a bottle of wine, a different one this time, red instead of white, because she didn't care anymore what Meredith liked. David answered the door. He looked better than he had last week, less tired, more present. And he hugged her. A real hug. The kind that felt like he meant it. Mom. Hey. He pulled back, looked at her face like he was searching for something. You okay? I'm fine, honey. He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Meredith appeared behind him, already smiling, already moving, ushering Rose inside. The house smelled like roasted chicken and rosemary. The kitchen was spotless. Tasha was already there, a woman in her 30s with a choppy black bob and a leather jacket, sitting on one of the bar stools with a glass of wine in her hand. She stood when Rose walked in, extended a hand, smiled wide. You must be Rose. Meredith's told me so much about you. Rose shook her hand. Tasha's grip was firm, confident. Her nails were painted a deep purple. Rose noticed the bag on the counter, a black duffel, unzipped, tools visible inside. Scissors, clippers, bottles of bleach. I thought we'd do the makeover after dinner, Meredith said. She handed Rose a glass of wine, gestured toward the dining room. But Tasha wanted to meet you first, get a sense of your style. My style, Rose repeated. She took a sip of wine. It was too sweet. You know, what you're drawn to, what makes you feel like you. Meredith's voice was light, almost teasing. She looped her arm through Rose's, guided her toward the table. Come on, let's eat. Then we'll have some fun. Dinner was chicken, roasted vegetables, a salad that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Meredith and Tasha talked about color theory, about trends, about a salon in Brooklyn that was doing interesting things with texture. David ate in silence. Rose pushed food around her plate and felt the weight of the duffel bag on the counter like a stone in her chest. After dinner, Meredith cleared the plates and gestured to one of the kitchen chairs. Not the dining table, not the living room, but the chair by the island, the one that swiveled and had armrests. Sit, sit! Tasha's going to work her magic. Rose sat. Tasha draped a cape around her shoulders, clipped it at the back of her neck. She ran her fingers through Rose's hair, lifting sections, studying them in the overhead light. Beautiful texture, she said. But yeah, we can definitely modernize this. Maybe a bob, something sleek? Or shorter, Meredith said. She was leaning against the counter now, wine glass in hand, watching. Something really bold. She's got the bone structure for it. Rose looked at David. He was standing by the sink, his back to them, washing dishes that were already clean. She wanted him to turn around, to look at her, to say something. Let's start with a trim, Tasha said. She picked up the scissors, sectioned Rose's hair, and started cutting. The sound was sharp, metallic, each snip louder than it should have been. Meredith moved closer. She set her wine glass down, folded her arms, tilted her head like she was appraising a painting. You know what? Let's go shorter. Way shorter. Let's shave the witch clean. She said it like a joke, her voice light, almost sing-song, but Rose heard it, the word, the intent beneath it. Tasha hesitated, scissors midair. I mean, are you sure? That's pretty drastic. She'll love it, Meredith said. She reached over, touched Tasha's shoulder, leaned in close. Trust me. Tasha looked at Rose. Rose looked back. She should have said no. Should have stood up, pulled the cape off, walked out. But her body felt frozen. Heavy. Like moving would require more energy than she had. Tasha set down the scissors. She picked up the clippers. The sound was different now, a low buzz, mechanical, relentless. Rose felt the cold blade against the back of her neck, felt her hair fall away in clumps, landing on the cape, on her lap, on the floor. She closed her eyes, tried to breathe, heard Meredith laugh, a bright, sharp sound that echoed in the too-clean kitchen. The front door opened. Footsteps. David's voice, distant, like he was on a phone call. Then closer. Then in the doorway. Rose opened her eyes, looked at him, saw his face freeze, his mouth open just slightly, his eyes wide. Horror. That's what it was. Horror he tried to cover, tried to smooth into something neutral, something that wouldn't make waves. But he didn't say stop. Rose stood. The cape slipped off her shoulders. Half her hair was gone, buzzed close on one side, still long on the other, uneven and raw. Tasha stepped back, clipper still in her hand. Meredith's smile didn't falter. "Rose, wait." David's voice cracked. He took a step toward her. Rose picked up her purse. She walked past him, past Meredith, past Tasha with her purple nails and her too-wide smile. She didn't run, didn't rush, just walked. Out the door, down the driveway, to her car. Behind her, she heard Meredith's voice, bright and incredulous. "You're so dramatic." But underneath it, Rose heard something else. Satisfaction. Rose drove home with one hand on the wheel and the other pressed to her scalp. She could feel the bare patches, the places where the clippers had scraped too close. Silver strands were still falling, catching on her collar, sliding down onto the passenger seat. She didn't brush them away, just drove. Focused on the road, on the streetlights, on the porch light she'd left on before she'd gone to dinner. She parked in the driveway and sat there. 20 minutes, maybe longer. The engine ticked as it cooled. A neighbor's dog barked once, then went quiet. Rose stared at her front door and tried to remember how to move. Finally, she got out, walked inside, locked the door behind her, dropped her purse on the couch, went straight to the bathroom. The mirror was the same one she'd looked into 3 years ago, when her hair had started to grow back. She'd stood here, morning after morning, counting each new strand. Proof. That's what it had been. Proof that she was still here, still alive, still her. Now she saw the butchered patches. The uneven buzz on one side, the longer strands on the other. The intent behind it stared back at her, undeniable. She thought about her husband. The way he touched her hair after it grew back, gentle, reverent. Like moonlight, he'd said. Not because it was pretty, because it was hers. Because she'd survived. Rose picked up her own scissors, the professional ones she kept in the bathroom drawer, sharp and precise. She sectioned her hair, started cutting, evened it out, buzzed it short, took control of what had been taken from her. She didn't cry, didn't shake, just worked. Methodical. Steady. When she was done, her hair was close cropped all over, short enough that the silver looked intentional, bold even. She ran her hand over it, felt the new texture, the different length. It wasn't what she would have chosen, but it was hers now. That was something. The next morning, Rose called Martin. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. "Rose, good morning. What's going on?" "I need you to review my will," she said. "Make sure it's ironclad." There was a pause. Then, "Of course. Can I ask why?" "I'll explain when you get here." Martin arrived that afternoon. He let himself in through the side door the way he always did and found Rose in the kitchen. Coffee was already brewing. 2 mugs sat on the table, mismatched, chipped in places, comfortable. Martin set his briefcase down and pulled out a chair. He looked at Rose, really looked, and his gaze caught on her hair. He didn't comment, just waited. Rose poured the coffee, sat down across from him, slid the folder across the table. Martin opened it, read the first page, the second. His face didn't change, but his jaw tightened. He set the papers down carefully, precisely, and looked up at Rose. "Did you sign this?" "No." "Good." He closed the folder. "If you had, this would have given them power of attorney. You'd have signed away. Decision-making rights. Not just the property. Everything." Rose wrapped her hands around her mug. The ceramic was warm, grounding. "I figured." "How did you get this?" she told him. The dinner. Meredith's insistence. The codicil, pre-notarized, ready to sign. She didn't tell him about the makeover, about Tasha's clippers or Meredith's voice saying shave the witch like it was a joke. She didn't have the words for that yet. Martin listened. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. Rose, this is financial abuse. Textbook. I know. Do you want to pursue legal action? No. The word came out sharper than she meant it to. She softened her voice. I just want to make sure she can't do this. Can't take what's mine. Martin nodded. He pulled a legal pad from his briefcase, clicked his pen. Tell me what you want to change. Rose thought about it. About the salon, the space she'd built. The chairs, the mirrors, the frosted glass that turned morning light into something softer. She thought about David, about the gap-toothed boy in the photos on her wall, and the man who'd stood in Meredith's kitchen and said nothing. The salon, she said, I want it to go to a nonprofit, something that trains people. Abuse survivors, maybe. People who need a trade, a way forward. And David? He gets the house, my savings, everything else. Just not the salon. That's mine to give, not Meredith's to take. Martin wrote it down. I'll draft the amendment today. You can come by tomorrow to sign. Thank you. He stood, gathered his papers, then paused at the door. Rose, are you okay? She touched her hair, the short, unfamiliar texture. I will be. That evening, Rose sat alone at her kitchen table. The codicil was still there, cream-colored and damning. She picked it up, held it for a long moment, then tore it in half. Then in half again. And again. Until it was just pieces, small and meaningless, scattered across the table. She picked up her phone, scrolled to David's number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She didn't press it. Instead, she opened her text thread with Martin. Typed, I want to make the change today. Can you draft something now? His response came quickly, already working on it. I'll have it ready in an hour. Rose set the phone down. She looked around her kitchen, at the photos on the walls, at the guitar in the corner, at the table that wobbled if you leaned too hard. She thought about the salon, about the women who would come after her, who would learn to cut hair and build something of their own. About David, who would inherit what she chose to give him and nothing more. The decision settled in her chest, heavy, final, right. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the backyard. The porch light was still on. It would stay on. She'd make sure of it. 1 week later, Rose stood in her salon at 7 a.m, the kind of early that made the world feel like it belonged to her alone. The coffee machine burbled in the back room. Light filtered through the frosted glass, turning everything pale gold. She caught her reflection in the mirror, the close-cropped silver hair, buzzed short, and even now, shaped by her own hands instead of someone else's cruelty. A client had asked yesterday if it was a new style. Rose had said, something like that, and left it there. She ran her hand over her scalp. The texture was different, softer than she'd expected. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like a choice she'd made in the aftermath of something stolen. That was enough. The bell above the door chimed. Rose turned, expecting her 8 o'clock, but it was David. He stood in the doorway looking like he hadn't slept, rumpled shirt, shadows under his eyes, hands shoved deep in his pockets. He didn't come in right away. Just stood there, hesitating, like he wasn't sure he was allowed. Come in, Rose said. Her voice was neutral, not warm, not cold. Just there. David stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He looked around the salon like he was seeing it for the first time. The chairs, the mirrors, the framed photos on the wall of Rose. With clients, Rose cutting ribbon at the grand opening 23 years ago, Rose standing next to his father with a pair of scissors in her hand and a smile that reached her eyes. I didn't know if you'd want to see me, he said. Rose walked to the back room, poured 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one. Sit. He sat in the chair by the window, not her chair, not the one with the cracked armrest, but the guest chair where clients waited. Rose leaned against the counter, coffee warm in her hands, and watched him. I'm sorry, David said. The words came out fast, like he'd been practicing them, for letting things get out of hand. Meredith, she got carried away. I changed my will, Rose said. David stopped. His coffee cup hovered halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly, carefully on the armrest. What? I changed my will. Martin has the new version. It's signed. Legal. Done. His face went pale, then red, then something in between. Mom, why would you? The salon goes to a nonprofit now, a training program for abuse survivors learning a trade, women who need a way forward. Rose kept her voice steady. Matter of fact, you still get the house, my savings, everything else, but the salon's mine to give, not Meredith's to take. David stood up so fast the chair rocked backward. You're punishing me for her mistakes. I didn't know about that codicil, Mom. I swear I didn't. Why didn't you stop her? The question hung in the air. David opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. You walked into that kitchen, Rose said, her voice quieter now but no less firm, and you saw what was happening. You saw Tasha with those clippers. You saw Meredith standing there smiling. You heard what she said. She paused, took a breath. Why didn't you stop her? David's voice cracked. He ran a hand through his hair, looked anywhere but at Rose. I froze. I didn't know what to say. I don't know what I thought. You laughed when she called me witchy. At that dinner, 6 months ago, you thought it was funny. I didn't. You did. Rose set her coffee down, crossed her arms. And maybe you didn't mean anything by it. Maybe it was just a joke to you. But it wasn't to her. And you let it happen. You stood there, and you let it happen. David sank back into the chair. He put his head in his hands. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The coffee machine hissed. A car drove past outside. Rose watched her son, 34 years old, a grown man, a stranger in some ways, and felt the distance between them like a physical thing. The salon was always going to be yours, Rose said finally. I built it for you, for us, for the future, but I'm not signing my life away so Meredith can have equity. I'm not giving her power over me because you won't stand up to her. David looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. What do you want me to do? I want you to decide what kind of man you are. He stared at her. She stared back. Then she picked up her coffee, took a sip, and walked to the door. She opened it. The morning air rushed in, cool and clean. I have a client at 8, she said. You should go. David stood. He looked like he wanted to say something else, something that might bridge the gap, might undo the last 10 minutes, but the words didn't come. He walked past her, out the door, and down the sidewalk to his car. Rose watched him drive away. Then she closed the door, locked it, and went to finish her coffee in the back room. 2 months passed like water through a sieve. Rose worked, cut hair, smiled at clients. Trained a new stylist named Amber, a young woman from the nonprofit program that would one day inherit the salon. Amber was careful with the scissors, asked questions, listened. She reminded Rose of herself at 25, all nerves and determination and hope that the world might be kinder than it looked. Then the letter came. Rose found it in her mailbox on a Thursday afternoon, wedged between a grocery store flyer and a bill from the electric company. A cream-colored envelope. Heavy paper. A law office's return address embossed in the corner. She opened it standing in her driveway, the autumn sun warm on her shoulders. The letter was formal, bloodless. Peterson and Vale, attorneys at law. They were writing on behalf of Meredith Hayes, who was challenging the recent amendment to Rose's will, the grounds, undue influence by Rose's attorney, Martin Cross, and diminished capacity due to age and erratic behavior. Affidavits were attached. Rose flipped through them. Statements from people she didn't know, describing her buzzed hair as evidence of instability. A personality change. A sign that she wasn't of sound mind. Rose stood there in the driveway, the letter in her hands, and laughed. Not a happy sound. A dry, sharp sound that caught in her throat and turned into something closer to a cough. She walked inside, set the letter on the kitchen table, the same table where Martin had warned her, where she'd torn up Meredith's codicil, where she'd made the decision to change the will in the first place, and sat down. She cut her own hair, Rose said aloud to the empty kitchen. Therefore she's incompetent. Solid legal argument, really airtight. She picked up her phone, texted Martin. Got a letter from Peterson and Vale. Meredith's challenging the will. Can we talk? His response came in under a minute. I'll be there in 20. Martin arrived with his briefcase and a grim expression. He sat down, read the letter, read the affidavits, then set them aside and looked at Rose. This is garbage, he said, but we need to take it seriously. How seriously? Seriously enough to go to court, She's filed a petition. There'll be a hearing. Rose felt something cold settle in her stomach. When? 3 weeks, maybe 4. Martin pulled out his legal pad, started making notes. We'll need to gather evidence. Medical records. Your oncologist can provide an affidavit that you're in full remission. Cognitive function excellent. Salon financial records to show the business is thriving. Witness statements from clients. Anything that proves you're competent and made this decision freely. I did make it freely. I know, but we have to prove it. He paused, pen hovering over the paper. Rose, this is going to get ugly. Meredith's lawyer is going to argue that you're old, confused, easily manipulated. They're going to use your hair as evidence. They're going to make you look unstable. Let them try. Martin studied her face, then he nodded. Okay, let's build a case. The hearing was held in a small county courthouse, the kind with wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lights that buzzed too loud. Rose sat at a table with Martin on her left, her hands folded in her lap, her heart beating steady and slow. Across the aisle, Meredith sat with her lawyer, a man in a gray suit with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. David sat behind Meredith. He didn't look at Rose, not once. The judge was a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She reviewed the petition in silence, flipping through pages, making notes in the margins. Then she looked up. Ms. Hayes, she said, addressing Meredith's lawyer, you're arguing that the recent amendment to Mrs. Rose's will was made under undue influence and diminished capacity. Present your case. The lawyer stood. He was smooth, practiced. He spoke about Rose's age, 68, a vulnerable population, and her recent cancer diagnosis. While we're grateful for her recovery, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy, the trauma of such an illness can have lasting effects on cognitive function and decision-making. He presented the affidavits. Described the hair incident, Rose's sudden decision to buzz her hair short, as evidence of a personality change. Erratic behavior, he called it, impulsive, uncharacteristic. He showed photos. Rose in the before, long silver hair, smiling. Rose in the after, close-cropped, unsmiling. He didn't mention Meredith, didn't mention Tasha or the Clippers or the word witch. Mrs. Rose was clearly not herself, the lawyer concluded, and her attorney, Mr. Cross, took advantage of that vulnerability to convince her to change her will in a way that benefits his interests, specifically a non-profit organization he sits on the board of. It was a lie. Martin wasn't on any board. But the lawyer said it with such confidence that it almost sounded true. The judge turned to Martin. Mr. Cross, your response? Martin stood. He didn't smile, didn't perform, just presented the facts. Medical records from Rose's oncologist. Full remission, no cognitive decline, regular checkups showing excellent health. Salon financial records, consistent profit, no erratic spending, a thriving business run with precision and care. Witness statements from clients, Mrs. Valdez, among others, describing Rose as sharp, present professional. Mrs. Rose is fully competent, Martin said. She made this decision freely, with full understanding of its implications. Then he pulled out his phone, set it on the table, pressed play. What is this? Meredith's lawyer asked. Phone records, Martin said, showing that Ms. Meredith Hayes researched contesting wills and elder incompetence claims 2 weeks before the incident with the hair. Before Mrs. Rose made any changes to her will, before there was any reason to question her competence. The courtroom went quiet. Meredith's face went pale. Her lawyer leaned over, whispered something urgent in her ear. She shook her head, whispered back, but her hands were shaking. This suggests premeditation, Martin continued, not concern for Mrs. Rose's well-being, but a calculated plan to manipulate her into signing over property, and then, when that failed, to challenge her competence in order to gain control of her estate. The judge removed her glasses. She looked at Meredith, then at Rose, then at the phone records spread across the table. Ms. Hayes, the judge said, her voice flat, did you or did you not research legal strategies for contesting a will before Mrs. Rose changed hers? Meredith opened her mouth, closed it. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm, started to speak, but the judge held up a hand. I'm asking Ms. Hayes. Meredith's voice was barely a whisper. I was just looking into options, in case In case what? The judge's tone sharpened. In case Mrs. Rose didn't do what you wanted? Silence. The judge put her glasses back on. She made a note on the papers in front of her, then looked up. The petition is denied. The will stands as written. Moreover, I'm ordering Ms. Hayes to cease all contact with Mrs. Rose, and I'm flagging this case for investigation into potential financial abuse. She paused. Attempting to manipulate an elder into signing over property under false pretenses constitutes a serious offense. If this matter is pursued further, Ms. Hayes may face legal consequences. The gavel came down. Sharp. Final. Rose sat very still. She felt Martin's hand on her shoulder, a brief squeeze, a silent "you did it." She felt the weight lift from her chest, the space where fear had been filling with something lighter. Relief, clarity, peace. Across the aisle, Meredith stood. She didn't look at Rose, just gathered her things, her face blank, and walked out of the courtroom. David followed her. He paused at the door, glanced back. Rose met his eyes. He looked away first. Act V. 3 weeks after the hearing, Rose stood in her salon on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. Amber was at the second chair, the one with the cracked armrest, Rose's old chair, cutting hair for a walk-in client. She was careful, methodical. She asked questions, listened to the answers, adjusted her technique based on what the client wanted. Rose watched from the counter, arms folded, a faint smile on her face. "You're doing great," Rose said when Amber finished the cut and reached for the blow-dryer. Amber looked up, surprised. "Really?" "Really. You've got good instincts. Trust them." Amber smiled, a little shy, a little proud, and turned back to her client. Rose felt something warm settle in her chest. This was what the salon would become. Not just a business, a place where people learned, where they built something, where they found a way forward. The bell above the door chimed. Rose turned, expecting another walk-in, and found David instead. He looked different. Thinner, maybe, or just tired. He stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets, the same uncertain posture he'd had the last time he came, and waited. Rose nodded toward the chair by the window. "Sit." He did. Rose walked to the back room, poured 2 cups of coffee, brought them out. She handed him one and sat down across from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The salon hummed around them, the sound of the blow-dryer, the low murmur of Amber's voice, the smell of shampoo and coffee mixing in the air. "Meredith moved out," David said finally. "Filed for separation last week." Rose took a sip of her coffee. "I'm sorry." He looked up, surprised. "Are you?" "I'm sorry you're hurting. I'm not sorry she's gone." David nodded slowly. He stared into his coffee cup like it might hold answers. "I should have stopped her, at the house, with the clippers. I should have said something." "Yes." "I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make a scene. I thought—" He stopped, shook his head. "I don't know what I thought." Rose set her cup down. "You thought keeping the peace was more important than protecting me." David flinched. "Yeah, I guess I did. And now? Now I know I was wrong." He looked at her finally, really looked. "I'm sorry, Mom, for all of it. For not seeing what she was doing, for not standing up, for letting you down." Rose studied his face, saw the regret there, real and raw, saw the boy he'd been and the man he was trying to become. She didn't forgive him, not yet. But she saw him. "I changed the will," she said, "because I needed to protect what's mine, not because I wanted to punish you." "I know. Do you?" David nodded. "I think so." "Yeah?" Rose picked up her coffee again. "You can visit if you want. Sundays, we'll have coffee. We'll see how it goes." "No expectations?" "No expectations." David's shoulders sagged, relief washing over his face. "Okay, thank you." He finished his coffee, stood, hesitated by the door like he wanted to say something else. Rose waited. He opened his mouth, closed it, then just nodded and walked out. The bell chimed as the door swung shut behind him. Rose sat there for a moment, the empty coffee cup in her hands, and felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just space. Room to breathe, room to see what might come next. At 5 o'clock, Rose's last client of the day walked in. Mrs. Valdez, right on schedule, smiling and already pulling off her coat. "Rose, how are you?" "I love the hair, by the way. It suits you." Rose touched her scalp, the same gesture she'd made in the mirror weeks ago, but different now, familiar, hers. "Thank you. I'm getting used to it." "Well, it looks good. Bold." "You look good." Rose smiled. She draped the cape around Mrs. Valdez's shoulders, clipped it at the back, and picked up her scissors. "Same as usual?" "Same as usual." They fell into easy conversation. Mrs. Valdez talked about her grandchildren, about the new restaurant downtown, about the neighbor's dog that still barked too early. Rose listened, sectioned hair, snipped with precision. The rhythm was soothing, meditative, the kind of work that didn't require thought but rewarded attention. When she finished, she styled Mrs. Valdez's hair, walked her to the front desk, rang her up. Mrs. Valdez tipped well, like always, and promised to come back in 6 weeks. "See you then," Rose said. The door closed. The bell chimed. Rose locked it, flipped the sign to closed, and stood there for a moment in the quiet. Then she walked back to her chair, the second one from the window, the leather cracked just so, and sat down. The salon was hers. The house was hers. Her hair was hers. She ran her hand over her scalp again, feeling the short, soft texture. It had grown back once before. It would grow back again, or it wouldn't. Either way, it was hers. That was enough. She stood, grabbed the broom from the back room, and started sweeping. Silver strands mixed with brown and black and blonde, the remnants of the day's work gathering in the dustpan. She swept methodically, corner to corner, under the chairs, by the door. When she finished, she emptied the dustpan into the trash, put the broom away, and turned off the lights. The frosted glass turned the evening light soft. Rose stood in the doorway, her hand on the light switch, and looked at the salon one more time. The chairs, the mirrors, the photos on the wall. This space had been her husband's dream as much as hers. He'd believed in it when it was just an idea, helped her build it when it was just a plan, celebrated with her when it became real. Now it would help someone else build something. That felt right. Rose turned off the last light, locked the door, and walked to her car. The drive home was quiet. The streets were familiar. She pulled into her driveway, saw the porch light glowing warm and yellow, and felt something settle in her chest. Not relief, not triumph, just presence. Just the quiet knowledge that she was here, she was whole, and she was hers. She got out of the car, walked to the front door, and paused. Looked up at the sky, dark now, scattered with stars, the kind of night that felt endless. She thought about her husband, about the way he used to touch her hair and call it moonlight, about the way he'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. "I'm still here," she thought. Still standing, still mine. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and turned on the lights. The house smelled like coffee and wood and the faint, lingering scent of the cinnamon rolls she'd baked last Sunday. She walked through the living room, past the photos on the wall, past the guitar in the corner, into the kitchen. She made tea, sat at the table, looked at the window over the sink, the one that faced the backyard where David used to play. The porch light was on. It would stay on. She'd make sure of it. Rose touched her hair one more time, short, silver, hers. She smiled, not at anyone, not for anyone, just for herself, and took a sip of tea. Outside, the night stretched on. Inside, the light stayed warm. And Rose, 68 years old, cancer survivor, salon owner, mother, sat in her kitchen and felt the quiet weight of her own presence. It was enough, more than enough. It was hers.